of language and the creative chaos of slangs. A grade 12 student looked at me, smirked, and said, "You won't understand, ma'am. You are a boomer." Everybody burst out laughing, and so did I. But later, I reflected on this generation gap, the simple statement exposed. Not a boomer, but yes, I do belong to Generation X. The generation that still believes that reading the newspaper cover to cover is the only way to stay truly informed. We were raised in an era where social acceptance mattered more than personal truth. A time when you could be falling apart on the inside, but as long as your shoes were polished and your hair neatly combed, you were doing just fine. Mental health, that was for the weak. For those who couldn't handle the turmoils of life. PTSD, OCD, these were fancy acronyms that didn't exist in our generation. Back in the day, if you were struggling, you could either be in a bad mood, had a nasty character, or simply had a bad habit that needed fixing. And the solution? Just get a grip, or this too shall pass. So, this too shall pass, we were told like that. But reality has a funny way of catching up with you. It hit me the day my son asked me, "Ma, why didn't you ever ask me how I felt when I went in my shell?" The question shook me, because the truth is, I hadn't. I never thought his behavior was unusual. We labeled him as an introvert who loved his own company. We never considered that maybe he wasn't choosing solitude but suffering in silence. That was my awakening. But my husband, raised on rocks in defense services, still resists the idea of feelings. For him, any stress can be cured with a morning jog and a strong cup of tea. But let me tell you, mental health is real. And so if you are thinking that this is just a personal story, let's talk numbers. Majority of mental health disorders get established by the age of 14. And most of them get rooted by the time we turn 24. That means mental health issues don't just surface in adulthood. They start early. When we are in school, when we are trying to figure out who we are, when we don't even know how to put our emotions into words. If they start this early, when does prevention start? It starts with caregiving. Caregiving is not about providing food, clothing, and shelter. It's about raising emotionally intelligent, mentally strong, and self-assured children. And here's the catch. We cannot nurture emotionally intelligent children unless we are ourselves aware. A mentally strong generation doesn't magically appear out of yoga apps and motivational quotes. It is raised by caregivers who aren't themselves running out of caffeine, guilt, and 4 hours of sleep. I speak here today as a caregiver, a woman, a parent, and an educator. And I want you all to view the mental health paradigm through the eyes of these caregivers who live the emotional labor which often goes unseen. Women are the unsung heroes of the world. We are the CEOs of our homes, the unpaid therapists of our families, the event managers of every festival, and the crisis managers of "Mama, where's my t-shirt" situation. And let's not forget, in most Indian homes, cooking, that's the women's department. Children's education and moral upbringing, that's a woman's responsibility. Family relationships, handle with care, madam, that's your responsibility too. How many times you've been asked after a long day, is there something you want or you want to do? Hardly. Somewhere along the way, women learned that self-care is selfish. Self-care is an option, something that can wait till the time other things are taken care of. We tell ourselves most often that we will take a break when this project gets over. We'll take rest when children get settled. We will focus on ourselves when the world stops needing us. My dear friends, this world never stops needing us. Self-care is not an option which has to be squeezed in after everything has been taken care of. So ladies, let's rewrite some rules. Let's normalize setting boundaries. Let's normalize following our passions without guilt. I loved singing and I wanted to learn classical music. But my parents never saw it as important. My husband never saw it as important. And eventually, even I stopped seeing it as important. And that's the real problem. Not that others ignore our passions, but that we also start ignoring them. Let's stop that. Let's normalize saying, I matter too. When we become parents, nobody gives us a training manual. There is no parenting for dummies that teaches us how to handle situations like PTSD, OCD, anxiety, first heartbreak, or that phase when they dress up like models but refuse to take shower. Today's generation is growing up in a very different world. A world where beauty standards are set by airbrushed Instagram influencers, where self-worth is measured by likes, shares, and the number of followers, where values are measured and assessed by your accomplishments and your salary packages, where heartbreak is not a tub of ice cream, but it can lead to a deep emotional trauma and identity crisis. Depression and anxiety have become household names today. Disney literally introduced a character named Anxiety in its Inside Out sequel. Let's face it and accept it, it is one of the most relatable villains of our times. I experienced it firsthand. My children, both of them, grew up with body image issues. They looked into the mirror and saw flaws that didn't exist. They believed they weren't good enough when they were perfect all along. One of them bought loose clothes for herself from the men's section, and the other one wore 6 layers just to hide his slender build. And where was I during all this? I thought I was being a good parent. I made sure they ate, they slept, they studied, but I never made sure they were emotionally okay. And by the time I realized my mistake, they had learned to hide their emotions. They were already convinced that nobody would understand. And that is the real burden of parenting. A child with bottled up emotions will grow into an adult who will struggle to express them. A child who has never seen emotional vulnerability at home will struggle with relationships outside. Let's make mental health a part of our conversations. Let's say and remind this to our children more often. Your feelings are valid and we are with you. The next breed of caregivers is very interesting. Educators. The teachers don't just walk in the classrooms and deliver lectures. They become motivational speakers. They become part-time counselors. They also become unwilling referees to some classroom wrestling matches. And of course, we have parental pressure. A child succeeds. He's naturally brilliant. A child struggles. What are the teachers even doing? And that's not enough. We have long working hours because lesson plans don't make themselves. Endless documentation because we must prove that we are doing our jobs. Exam results, board exam results, because one exam defines a child's and a teacher's worth. And management expectations, pardon sir and ma'am for this, pardon me. Management expectations which often translate to do more with less. And just when we were trying to figure out how to survive these overloaded schedules, Mr. Narayan Murthy generously suggested a 70-hour week. Mr. Murthy, please tell us, how do we include emotional breakdowns during lunch or after school hours? No wonder burnout rates are skyrocketing. Let's stop romanticizing burnouts as dedication. Let's create work-life boundaries that do not involve marking answer scripts at 2 a.m. Let's remember, most importantly, let's remember that educators don't just shape futures, they have a future too. Let's make sure we protect it. You know, the real problem with caregiving is the expectation that we must do it all flawlessly without breaking down. And so we push through. We continue even when our brains, our hearts are screaming for rest. When stress turns into anxiety and anxiety turns into numbness. We keep thinking that self-care is selfish, not for us. For a very long time, I thought exhaustion is a part of love. Good mothers, good wives, good teachers, good caregivers don't get tired. They just keep going. And I did. I kept going and going till the time I realized I'm not left with anything for myself. It wasn't a dramatic breakdown, no grand epiphany. just a quiet, unsettling moment when I thought, when and where did I lose myself? Self-care is no job, not a burden, and not a solitary journey. I have seen what happens when systems expect the caregivers to give endlessly without support. I have seen teachers getting drained by unrealistic expectations. I have seen mothers losing themselves in the limitless cycle of sacrifice. I have seen fathers battle silently because they do not know how to handle emotional fatigue. What if we change this? What if we start considering mental well-being as productivity, not weakness? What if we provide emotional support to teachers and not just academic stress? What if we ask our mothers more often, how do you feel? And not just what's in for dinner. Small changes, big impact. I stand here not as someone who has figured it all out, but as someone who is still learning. Learning that looking after yourself doesn't mean neglecting others. Learning that if we nurture ourselves, we will show up stronger, wiser, and more present for the people we love. And so, if I have to leave you with a thought, let it be this. Your self-care, your mental being is not an afterthought. It is your right. Prioritize yourself the way you prioritize others. Because when caregivers thrive, we create a world where care is not a sacrifice, but a shared thought. And that is the kind of world worth building. Thank you very much.